My name is Ailey McKeown, and this is my artist's talk for MAFA 5. I'm going to start off by explaining the research that I do, and how my work is sort of what I think is the appropriate response to the research, rather than something that is sort of written. So this is a wee map of Scotland, or of the Central Belt anyways, and Falthouse is where I come from. It's right in between Edinburgh and Glasgow, and I make all my work sort of informed by that, or always referential to that. So coming to uni, I was sort of very frustrated a lot of the time at how people really didn't know what they had no concept of Scotland really outside of Edinburgh, Glasgow, and the Highlands, and certainly not how somewhere like Falthouse would fit into the story. And it sort of had me reflect a lot upon what is distributed, or what information is available about everywhere else in Scotland, I guess. So looking at sort of any academic source, it's pretty grim. There's obviously not a lot of humanities research in this country at all, but specifically on sort of where I come from, West Lothian and North Lanarkshire, which were mining. They were predominantly mines and extraction and steelwork, heavy industries, which meant that people didn't go to uni because they were in the pit. And although there's been a couple of things written on sort of reflections upon deindustrialisation, there really isn't an awful lot. Everything is very, very outdated, so kind of no wonder anyone has, people just don't have an idea what's going on. But it really made me reflect upon my position as someone who was leaving Falthouse, to sort of take the trajectory of let's go to Edinburgh or Glasgow to sort of seek better things, and essentially leave that behind and never turn back. On this note, I also reflect upon my brief stint in Asda Armadale when I used to work with a man named Alec. And Alec told me that he couldn't read or write, and he just knew where everything was just because he could look at the packets. And that just got me thinking about how even if people did go or had access to academic documents about West Lothian or about psychogeography or anything, that actually quite a lot of people just couldn't understand them and couldn't read it, if they existed, which they don't. So for me, it became about creating a practice which was based in imagery and in sort of very familiar imagery, and in subversions of that, to then sort of create an awareness that something was different, and then up to interpretation. Relating to this, a lot of the work, or a lot of the research that actually goes into the work, is sort of collated quite retrospectively, where a lot of it is just collected, or sort of my own conclusions on how to visualise something happens through just a lot of dialogue, or a lot of observations of other people's dialogue, just to see, figure out how people feel, and what sort of things are bothering people, and yeah, to collate things that way, because I think the interviews can be very sort of stressful, and yeah, you kind of know you're being observed. So I like to do things a little bit behind the scenes, and then in that way it allows me to pull together lots of opinions and lots of observations across time, I guess, and make some work based upon that. So within these conversations, I think a really major point in the work this year is a sense of nostalgia and a sense of longing for the perceived good old days. But for most people, that just means being a part of a thriving community with a sustainable local economy and just being in an environment where they can trust people again, I think. And I think this is really visually evident in the mining tributes and the mining sculptures that went up over the last 15 years. And I spent a lot of time really angry at these, as they are shoddily researched and badly funded, and that's cyclical. And I just feel like they didn't serve people completely. But I did write my dissertation on them, and through that did come to the sort of conclusion that despite them being put there as a sort of commercial and political maybe ploy for the independence campaign, that they did still stand for something, and that was often a hope that the decline that people were facing would be reversed and people would sort of get these good old days back eventually. But that's not happened yet. That's people sort of arguing with the sculptures. I love when people do that. I think it's dead funny. And I think a lot of the time, because people don't make art, or don't make, sort of fine art, no one pursues contemporary art really from back home, that a lot of the art that is consumed and enjoyed is quite escapist, because sort of real life isn't too nice. But I think there's a real power in sort of dealing with it up front if you can. And I think that it's a super powerful tool to navigate and understand the environment that is the real life that is kind of horrible. I think I was reading James Robertson's Where the Land Lies Still, where he describes the Edinburgh-Glasgow Central line as a Scotland so real that it defies the imagination. And I think that that's really nice in conjunction with Ross Sinclair's work. So all of my work is entirely different. I really like to try as many things as humanly possible, if I see them fit, to sort of create an anti-archive of sculptural works where I believe that history and politics, different belief systems and people converge in every area of life. So I think that it's fantastic to sort of be able to comment on all of them, and let people choose what they will, and different things will speak to different people. So these are my little scalpies. And I'm really interested in using objects associated with identity and pride and sort of very staunch politics. I think that there's something really exciting about bringing that into a gallery space, and sort of exhuming what would be something that is sort of stuck or allocated to a particular period in history, and making that a little more mobile and making it a bit more flexible. And I repeatedly refer to it, but Mark Fisher saying, "Tradition counts for nothing when it is no longer contested and modified. A culture that is merely preserved is no culture at all." And in that sense, with the previous reference to sort of trade unionism in the banners, and sort of responding to these mining sculptures or industrial sculptures, I think that it's really nice to be able to pull a lot of these sort of socialist values, and the things that people really do miss, back into something that's more applicable to now. And I think going back and forth across history really allows you to pull out things that have changed, and maybe be angry about certain things. And I think that Jeremy Deller's work is something that I really look up to for this. I think he just does it really well. I really admire sort of going back in history in a world that's changing so fast and still acknowledging that certain things still cause people a lot of hurt. And I think as well he deals with sort of not letting people feel ashamed of their situation by bringing it to light and sort of putting it back into the public realm to be sort of discussed. And I think that's really great. Last year I read Maria Fusco's Who Does Not Envy With Us Is Against Us, where she says that collective shame is servitude. And I think that that's really great. Or well, that isn't great, but it's a really great phrase. So I guess all in all, what I'm trying to get at is to construct a practice and a body of work that is expansive in its materiality and in the things that it discusses, to sort of provide more of a story and more space and more place to discuss things and discuss situations, not only as seen within sort of big institutional spaces, but also back home as well. I'm hopefully trying to create a body of work that speaks in a language that everyone can really understand without de-intellectualizing anything, and hopefully present this as its own academic body of work.